My friends, I want you to imagine something with me for a moment. Right now, somewhere in the world, someone is staring at their phone, finger hovering over send, on a resignation email they've written 17 times but never sent. Their heart is pounding, their palms are sweating, and there's this voice in their head whispering the most dangerous lie they'll ever hear. Stay where you are. It's safer here. But here's what that voice won't tell you. The safest choice you can make is actually the most dangerous thing you'll ever do. I've spent over 4 decades studying human behavior, teaching in classrooms, writing books about personal transformation. I've worked with tens of thousands of people who are standing at the exact same crossroads you might be standing at right now. And what I've discovered will challenge everything you believe about safety, security, and the nature of fear itself. You see that person with the resignation email? They think they're protecting themselves, but they're actually destroying themselves one safe day at a time. Because here's the truth your mind doesn't want you to know. Fear of change isn't keeping you safe. It's keeping you small. And small is the most dangerous place you can live. Let me tell you something that might shock you. Fear of change is not natural. It's learned. When you emerged into this world, you were a magnificent being of pure potential. You didn't fear crawling, then walking, then running. You embraced each transformation with wonder and excitement. But somewhere along the way, you were taught that change equals danger. You were conditioned to believe that the unknown is your enemy. The smell of fear is metallic. It tastes like copper pennies in your mouth when you're about to make that life-altering phone call. And right now, as you're listening to these words, you know exactly what that call is. You know exactly what change you've been avoiding. That knowing isn't an accident. It's your soul trying to communicate with you. Think about your life at this very moment. Are you staying in a job that drains your spirit because it's familiar? Are you remaining in relationships that no longer serve you because change feels overwhelming? Are you living the same patterns, the same routines, the same limited thinking because stepping into something new feels impossible? Here's what I learned from working with thousands of people over the years, and this might disturb you. The fear of change isn't really about change at all. It's about death. Not physical death, but the death of who you think you are. When you contemplate real transformation, your ego screams in terror because it realizes that the person you've been identifying with might not survive the journey. But here's the beautiful paradox you need to understand. The very identity you're so desperately trying to protect is the prison that's keeping you from experiencing the life you truly desire. You are not your history. You are not your past mistakes. You are not your current circumstances. You are an infinite being having a temporary human experience, and change is not your enemy. Change is your gateway to remembering who you really are. Let me share something that happened in one of my workshops. A woman named Suzan walked into that room carrying 28 years of accumulated fear. She was 52, working as an accountant, and every morning she'd wake up with this heaviness in her chest. She dreamed of becoming an artist, but terror paralyzed her every time she considered change. During our conversation, I asked her, "Suzan, what if you don't change? What if you stay exactly where you are for the next 20 years? The color drained from her face. She realized the risk of staying the same was infinitely greater than the risk of changing. You see, when you refuse to change, you're not avoiding risk. You're choosing a different kind of risk. You're risking regret. You're risking the slow death of your dreams. You're risking reaching the end of your life and realizing you never truly lived. Here's what your therapist won't tell you about how your mind works. Your brain is designed to keep you alive, not to make you happy. It's constantly scanning for threats, and anything unfamiliar registers as potentially dangerous. This is why change feels so uncomfortable. Your primitive brain is doing its job, trying to keep you safe. But your brain doesn't understand that in today's world. The greatest danger isn't physical, it's psychological. It's the danger of living a life that isn't truly yours. It's the danger of dying with your music still inside you. When you allow fear of change to dictate your choices, you're handing over the keys to your life to a part of your mind that's operating from a caveman level of consciousness. You're letting your primitive brain make decisions for your evolved soul. I once worked with a man named Robert, who stayed in a toxic marriage for 15 years because he was terrified of being alone. One day he had a moment of clarity. He realized he was already alone. He was living with someone who didn't love or respect him. He was already experiencing the very thing he was most afraid of. This is what you need to understand right now. Often, the thing you're most afraid of is already happening. You're afraid of failure, but you're already failing by not trying. You're afraid of rejection, but you're already rejecting yourself by not honoring your truth. You're afraid of being alone, but you're already alone if you're not being authentic. The fear of change creates what I call psychological paralysis. You become like a person standing in a burning building who's afraid to jump out the window because they might get hurt. Meanwhile, the building is collapsing around them. Here's something that will make you question everything you believe about security. When you resist change, you don't stop it from happening. You just stop yourself from directing it. Change is the one constant in the universe. Everything is always changing. Your body is changing. Your relationships are changing. The world around you is changing. The question isn't whether change will happen. The question is whether you'll be a conscious participant in your own transformation or a victim of circumstances beyond your control. What if the very thing you're afraid of is exactly what you need to grow into the person you're meant to become? What if your fear is actually a compass pointing you toward your greatest opportunity for expansion? Let me ask you something. Have you ever noticed that the most meaningful changes in your life, the ones that led to the greatest growth and fulfillment, were often the ones you initially resisted? Maybe it was leaving home, ending a relationship that wasn't working, starting a new career, or moving to a new city. At the time, these changes probably felt terrifying. But looking back, can you see how they were exactly what you needed? This is what I call the retrospective wisdom phenomenon. From where you are now, you can see that the changes you once feared were actually gifts. They were opportunities for you to discover strength you didn't know you had, to develop resilience you didn't know you possessed. But here's the challenge. You can't wait for retrospective wisdom to make decisions about your current life. You have to develop what I call prospective faith. You have to trust that the same intelligence that guided you through previous changes is still available to guide you through current ones. Now, I know what you might be thinking, but you don't understand my situation. My circumstances are different. My fears are justified. Your circumstances are unique. Your challenges are real. But your potential for transformation is also real. The internal process of transformation is remarkably similar for everyone. It always begins with a choice to stop being a victim of your circumstances and start being the author of your story. Take Maria, a single mother of 3 who felt trapped by her circumstances. She dreamed of becoming a nurse, but couldn't see how it was possible. When I asked her, "What's the worst thing that could happen if you don't pursue your dream?" she said, "I'll spend the rest of my life wondering what could have been." That's when she realized not changing was the riskiest choice of all. Maria started with one night class, then another. It took 6 years, but she became a registered nurse. The key wasn't that she stopped being afraid. She was afraid every step of the way. The key was that she stopped letting fear make her decisions. This is what you need to understand. Courage isn't the absence of fear. Courage is feeling the fear and choosing to move forward anyway. It's recognizing that your fear is information, not instruction. It's understanding that your discomfort is often a sign that you're growing, not that you're in danger. When you were a child learning to ride a bicycle, you fell down many times. But you didn't interpret those falls as evidence that you weren't meant to ride a bike. You understood that falling was part of the learning process. You got back up because you had faith in your ability to eventually master this new skill. As adults, we've forgotten this fundamental truth. We've started interpreting discomfort as danger, uncertainty as threat, challenge as evidence that we're on the wrong path. But what if the opposite is true? What if discomfort is actually a sign that you're stretching beyond your current limitations? What if uncertainty is actually the space where miracles happen? The people who live the most fulfilling lives are not the ones who avoid change. They're the ones who learn to dance with it. They understand that change is not something that happens to them. It's something they participate in consciously and deliberately. These people have developed what I call change mastery. They've learned to see change not as a threat to their security, but as an opportunity for their evolution. They've learned to trust the process of transformation, even when they can't see the destination clearly. But how do you develop this kind of relationship with change? It starts with understanding that you have a choice in how you interpret what's happening in your life. Let's say you lose your job. You can interpret this as a catastrophe, as evidence that you're not good enough, as proof that life is unfair, or you can interpret it as an opportunity to reassess your career path, as a chance to discover what you really want to do with your life, as the universe's way of pushing you toward something better. The external event is the same in both cases. The only difference is the meaning you assign to it. And the meaning you assign to it will determine how you respond to it, which will determine the outcome you experience. This is what I mean when I talk about the power of intention. Your intention is not just what you want to happen, it's how you choose to interpret what's already happening. It's the lens through which you view your experience. And this lens has the power to transform your entire life. Now you might be thinking, this all sounds good, but what about practical concerns? What about money? What about security? What about my responsibilities to others? These are valid concerns. But let me offer you a different way of thinking about security. True security doesn't come from external circumstances, it comes from internal resources. It comes from knowing that you have the ability to adapt, to learn, to grow, to create solutions to whatever challenges you face. When you base your security on external things, on your job, your savings account, your relationships, you're building your house on shifting sand. These things can change or disappear at any moment. But when you base your security on your inner resources, on your creativity, your resilience, your ability to connect with others and solve problems, you're building your house on solid rock. I've seen people who lost everything and yet found a way to rebuild their lives because they had developed this inner security. And I've seen people who had everything, wealth, status, perfect health, and yet lived in constant fear because they hadn't developed the inner resources to handle uncertainty. The paradox is this: the more you try to control your external circumstances to create security, the more insecure you become. Because deep down, you know that you can't really control these things. But the more you develop your inner resources, the more secure you become. This is why I always tell people, don't ask life to be easier, ask yourself to be stronger. Don't ask for fewer challenges, ask for more wisdom. Don't ask for change to stop happening, ask for the courage to dance with it. David worked for the same company for 25 years. When his position was eliminated at 55, his first reaction was panic. But after the shock wore off, he realized he'd been feeling dead inside for years. The job loss became an opportunity to reconnect with his passion for woodworking. Today, he runs a successful custom furniture business and says losing his job was the best thing that ever happened to him. This is the power of reframing. David could have stayed stuck in victimhood. Instead, he chose to see his situation as an opportunity for reinvention. But David's transformation didn't happen overnight. The first step was accepting what had happened without resistance. He didn't waste energy fighting against reality. He accepted what was, and then asked himself, now what? What's possible from here? This is one of the most important skills you can develop, the ability to accept what is without resistance. When you resist what's happening, you're essentially arguing with reality. And when you argue with reality, you lose every time. Acceptance doesn't mean you like what's happening. It means you're not wasting energy fighting against what's already occurred. You're conserving your energy for what you can actually influence, your response to what's happening. This is where your real power lies. You can't always control what happens to you, but you can always control how you respond to what happens to you. And your response is what determines your experience. Now, let me talk about something that might be your biggest obstacle to embracing change: the opinions of others. How many times have you had an idea for a change you wanted to make, only to have someone tell you all the reasons why it wouldn't work? How many times have you let other people's fears become your own? The people who are most vocal about why you shouldn't change are often the ones who are most afraid of change themselves. They're projecting their own fears onto you. They're trying to keep you small because your growth threatens their comfort zone. This is why it's so important to be selective about who you share your dreams with. Not everyone deserves to know about your plans for transformation. Some people are dream killers, and they don't even realize it. They think they're being helpful by pointing out all the potential problems, but what they're really doing is feeding your fear. Surround yourself with people who believe in your potential for growth. Seek out mentors who have made the kinds of changes you want to make. Fill your mind with stories of transformation and possibility. But most importantly, learn to trust your own inner guidance. You have a wisdom inside you that knows what's right for you. It's not always the loudest voice in your head, but it's the most reliable. It's the voice that whispers rather than shouts, that suggests rather than demands. This inner wisdom is what I call your authentic self. It's the part of you that existed before you were conditioned by society, before you learned to be afraid, before you started believing that you were limited. This authentic self is always calling you toward growth, toward expansion, toward becoming more of who you really are. But here's the challenge. Your authentic self often asks you to do things that don't make sense to your logical mind. It asks you to take risks, to trust the unknown, to follow your heart, even when you can't see the path clearly. This is why so many people ignore this inner guidance. They're waiting for a guarantee, a clear plan, a promise that everything will work out. But life doesn't work that way. Growth requires faith. It requires you to take the first step, even when you can't see the whole staircase. It requires you to trust that the path will appear as you walk it. Jennifer was a successful lawyer who felt empty inside. She'd always been drawn to healing work, but couldn't imagine giving up her lucrative career. Her authentic self kept calling her toward this path. She started small, taking weekend courses, volunteering at a wellness center. Eventually, she left her law practice to pursue healing work full-time. Today, she runs a successful healing practice. She makes less money than she did as a lawyer, but she's infinitely richer in terms of life satisfaction. This is what happens when you have the courage to follow your authentic self. You don't just change your circumstances, you change your entire relationship with life. You stop living from the outside in and start living from the inside out. Following your authentic self doesn't mean being irresponsible or reckless. It means being honest about what truly matters to you and making choices that align with your deepest values. It means being willing to trade security for authenticity, comfort for growth, approval for integrity. The fear of change is often really a fear of disapproval. You're afraid that if you change, people won't like you anymore. You're afraid of being judged, criticized, or rejected. But here's what I've learned. You can't live an authentic life and please everyone at the same time. It's impossible. The moment you start making choices based on what you truly want, rather than what others expect, some people will be uncomfortable. And that's okay. Their discomfort is not your responsibility. You didn't come into this world to live someone else's idea of what your life should look like. You came here to express your unique gifts, to follow your own path, to become the fullest version of yourself. And sometimes that means disappointing people who have different ideas about what you should do. This is one of the hardest lessons to learn, but it's also one of the most liberating. When you stop trying to please everyone, you free up enormous amounts of energy that you can use to create the life you actually want. Now you might be thinking, but what if I make the wrong choice? What if I change and then regret it? Here's something you need to understand. There are no wrong choices, only different experiences. Every choice you make teaches you something about yourself and about life. Even if a choice doesn't lead to the outcome you expected, it still has value if you're willing to learn from it. I've made many choices in my life that didn't turn out the way I planned, but I don't regret any of them because they all contributed to who I am today. They all taught me something important about myself, about others, about how the world works. The real tragedy is not making a choice that doesn't work out. The real tragedy is not making any choice at all. It's staying stuck in indecision, paralyzed by the fear of making a mistake. Because when you don't choose, you're still choosing. You're choosing to let circumstances choose for you. What if the purpose of your life isn't to avoid mistakes, but to learn and grow? What if every experience, whether you label it as success or failure, is actually serving your highest good? This is what I call the curriculum of life. Every situation you encounter, every challenge you face, every change you're called to make is part of your curriculum. It's designed to help you develop the qualities you need to to become who you're meant to be. From this perspective, there's no such thing as a wrong choice. There are only choices that teach you different lessons. Some lessons are more comfortable than others, but they're all valuable if you're willing to learn from them. This understanding can free you from the paralysis of perfectionism. You don't have to make the perfect choice. You just have to make a choice, and then learn from whatever happens. You can always make another choice later based on what you've learned. Remember Suzan? After she left her accounting job to pursue art, she expected everything to fall into place immediately, when it didn't. When she struggled financially and faced criticism, she almost gave up. But then she realized her struggles weren't evidence that she'd made a mistake. They were evidence that she was growing, learning, becoming the person she was meant to be. Today, Suzan is a successful artist whose work hangs in galleries across the country. But more importantly, she's a woman who learned to trust herself, to follow her authentic path, to embrace change as a natural part of her evolution. Right now, as you're listening to these words, there's a part of you that knows exactly what change you need to make in your life. It might be a small change or a transformational one. It might be something you've been thinking about for years, or something that just occurred to you today. That knowing is not an accident. It's your authentic self trying to communicate with you. It's your inner wisdom pointing you toward your next step in growth. The question is, are you going to listen to it, or are you going to let fear talk you out of it? Imagine yourself 1 year from now. If you continue on your current path, if you let fear keep you where you are, what will your life look like? How will you feel? What opportunities will you have missed? What dreams will still be waiting for you to find the courage to pursue them? Now, imagine yourself 1 year from now having made the change you know you need to make. Imagine having felt the fear and chosen to act anyway. Imagine having trusted your inner wisdom and taken that leap of faith. How would you feel? What would be possible in your life? What would you have learned about yourself? The difference between these two scenarios is not luck or circumstances or talent. The difference is choice. The choice to stop letting fear make your decisions. The choice to trust your authentic self. The choice to embrace change as a pathway to growth rather than a threat to your security. You have everything you need inside you right now to make this choice. You have the wisdom to know what's right for you. You have the strength to handle whatever challenges come your way. You have the creativity to find solutions to whatever problems arise. You have the resilience to bounce back from whatever setbacks you encounter. The only thing standing between you and the life you truly want is your willingness to change. And change is not something that happens to you. It's something you choose to participate in. It's something you embrace as a natural part of your evolution as a human being. Your life is not a dress rehearsal. This is it. This is your one chance to express your unique gifts, to follow your authentic path, to become the person you were born to be. Don't let fear rob you of this opportunity. Don't let the opinions of others keep you small. Don't let the comfort of the familiar prevent you from experiencing the extraordinary. The universe is conspiring to help you grow, to expand, to become more of who you truly are. But you have to be willing to participate in that conspiracy. You have to be willing to say yes to the changes that are calling you, even when you can't see exactly where they'll lead. Trust the process. Trust yourself. Trust that the same intelligence that created you is still guiding you. And remember, you are not here to live a small, safe, predictable life. You are here to shine your light, to share your gifts, to make your unique contribution to the world. The time for change is now. The person to make it happen is you. The life you've been dreaming of is waiting for you on the other side of your fear. Every moment you delay is a moment you're choosing to remain small when you were born to be magnificent. All you have to do is take the first step. And that step begins with a single decision: to stop letting fear of change hold you back from becoming who you were always meant to be.